Welcome to Storytime with Chris. Today I have a few local topics to talk about and just one for the NFL. I apologize for not getting a video or an episode out last week. Things got a little bit crazy with the 4th of July and I just got a little bit busy and didn't have time to record or do anything like that. So we're going to try to catch up on a couple of weeks worth of news. And let's go through the agenda for today. So I've got the Salt Lake City Summer League series to talk about. We got to see the Jazz 3 draft picks make their debuts and got to see a few of the other younger guys go out and play. I'll be covering the NHL, the Utah hockey team, some of their offseason moves that they've made so far and what I think about them, even though I don't really know a lot about hockey at this point. And then RSL has a couple of players going to the All-Star game, and I'll be talking about that as well. Besides that, as far as the NFL goes, they just released their new, well, they didn't, but the new series Receiver was released on Netflix. It featured two 49ers players, George Kittle and Deebo Samuel. So I'll be discussing my thoughts on that series and kind of what I took away from it. That is coming up next. The Salt Lake City Summer League series for the NBA just wrapped up this week. The Utah Jazz participated and we got to see a few of their young rookies and players play in this game, in these 3 games. So I'm going to just be honest and say that I'm not super familiar with the Summer League. Honestly, I haven't really watched the NBA in a few years, but I am starting to get back into it. And of course, being from Utah, the Jazz are the team that I'll support, and I'm sure some of you have figured this out from some of my previous videos, but I've sort of had a little bit of some issues with how the Jazz have been run the last few years, and some of the decisions that they're making are not things that I really agree with. But I figured I still want to support this team. I grew up really watching the Jazz. My favorite era of the Jazz was when Darren Williams was here, Memo Okur, Carlos Boozer, Korver, some of those guys, Ronnie Price, Millsap, Brewer, some of those guys. That's the era that I grew up watching and falling in love with the Jazz. And so when it comes to the Jazz, it's been tough going from this team that was, so close to being a championship. Well, maybe not so close, but pretty close to being a championship team with Gobert, and Mitchell was one of my favorite Jazz players ever. Anyway, that's in the past. So going into the Summer League, there were a few things that I was kind of expecting, and based off things that I saw other Jazz fans saying, was that this young group of Jazz players should really be dominant compared to some of the other teams, because these guys have played, at the professional level, maybe not at a highly professional level, but they all have more experience than a lot of these other young teams that we saw during the Summer League. So going into that, I was kind of thinking, this Jazz team, maybe they're not going to dominate. They should play really well. And there were a couple of guys who I think lived up to their standard, lived up to what I expected them to do against these other teams that I've viewed as weaker. So yeah, also I didn't get to watch the full games. So disclaimer, there were a few videos that I saw where it pretty much showed the whole game on these on shortened clips, but there were still quite a few things that were missed compared to what you would see, in the actual broadcast. So keep that in mind. I'm just going off, basically a condensed game, not a full game film. And with that in mind, the way I plan on kind of breaking down the Summer League is just by talking about the rookies first. So Cody Williams, Isaiah Collier, and then Kyle Filipowski. So I'll be focusing mostly on those guys, and there were a couple of other things that stood out to me that I want to talk about. So without further ado, let's continue on. So Cody Williams, of course, he was the first draft pick by the Jazz this year, and I thought he played pretty decently, especially in the first 2 games against Memphis and OKC. I think it became pretty apparent, and this is one thing that I said about him coming out of the draft, is that he does need to put on a little bit of weight. Even against these younger guys, it seemed like he was getting pushed around just a little bit, and when he goes up against tougher, veterans and just stronger players, that could potentially be an issue. But he did show some pretty good flashes. I mean, he made a few outside shots. In the first game, he had 6 points. In the second game, he had 7. And then the last game, he had 2. That last game seemed to be a little bit of a struggle for him. The 2 points came off 2 free free throws. He was 0 for 8 as far as field goals go, and 0 for 4 from 3. So, I think it is just part of adapting and putting on some weight. But he did show some flashes. I thought I saw some. I think he made 1 3. Yeah, it looks like he only made 1 3 during 3-game stretch, but he made a few plays, and he had a couple of steals throughout the 3-game series. So, it'll be a matter of time. Still a raw player, and we'll see how he goes. Isaiah Collier. Again, with Isaiah, I thought he played really well, honestly. It kind of looked like he came in and he looked like the same guy from college. He was, let's see, we'll go game by game. So in the first game, he had 14 points, 6 rebounds, 6 assists, 3 steals. So that's a pretty good stat line. I thought he really did pop in that first game for me. Honestly, out of the 3 rookies, I think he played the best during the summer league. I think he's the most NBA ready based on what I've seen. And he had an awesome breakaway pass to Lofton in that first game against the Grizzlies. I think it was at 438 based on my notes here. It was just a really, really nice pass and got the crowd going, and seeing him do that during a live NBA game would be awesome. And not to toot my own horn, but it seemed like my draft assessment of him was pretty much the same result that we saw in the summer league. He's a distributor. He can get the ball to open guys. He is creative with his passes. I think he just needs to get used to the speed of the NBA. He may have been a great passer in college, and he may have shown some things in the summer league, but guys in the NBA are faster, stronger, bigger. So once he adjusts to that, though, I think he's going to be a really, really solid pick, and he could be a guy that he potentially could be a starter coming out this season, in my opinion. He also did a really good job at creating opportunities for himself. He liked to drive in whenever he had the chance, and he did draw quite a few fouls. It seemed like he was a good free throw shooter. He was 50% in the first game against Memphis, then he got his groove back. It might have been, first summer league game jitters or something like that, but he really looked solid in all 3 games to me. He didn't play that much against OKC, but he still had 8 points, and against Philly he had 12 points. And yeah, he made a few 3-pointers as well. In the first game he was 2 for 5, 0 for 2 against OKC, and 1 for 2 against Philly. So he wasn't really known for his threes coming out of college, but he did show some glimpses of that, and I think if that's something he can improve on, he can be a really, really strong weapon for the Jazz going forward. He's got a lot of tools, and he just needs to work on his confidence, I think, and that'll come with time. Playing in the NBA, I'm sure it can be a little bit daunting at first. Anytime you move up a level, it can be a little bit daunting, and as soon as you get your confidence on that level, then I think really good things will come. He's also really excellent in transition, whether he's taking the ball in himself or distributing it to someone coming down the lane. He's a solid guy, and that's the one draft pick out of these 3 that I'm really excited to watch going forward. Kyle Filipowski. When he was drafted, I thought he would be the one guy out of the 3 that could come in and be the most NBA ready. But after watching him during the summer league, he definitely just needs quite a bit of time, I think. 0 points against Memphis, 4 points against OKC, 2 points against Philly, so 6 points total. I don't know. I expected to see a little bit more. He did do some good things. He had 4 rebounds against Memphis, 5 against OKC and Philly each. So, a few good things. But one thing that kind of stood out to me when I was looking at these statistics was he was minus 26 over the 3 games. He was minus 2 against Memphis, minus 20 against OKC, and minus 4 against Philly. Just nothing that really impressed me at all about him. Maybe he just needs some time. Maybe it was, nerves or something. But yeah, I don't really have much else to say. Hopefully he can figure it out, because he was one guy that I really thought would come in and perform at a high level. Not a high level, but a high level for a second round rookie in the NBA. And I did not see any signs of that during these 3 games. Hopefully he can work on that and prove me wrong. But yeah, we'll see. And of course, the guy that stood out to everyone, Keontae George. He had 2 really solid games. The first one against Memphis, he scored 30 points. He was 17 for 19 from free throw, which is where most of his points came from. He did have 4 rebounds, 4 assists, and 1 steal. And I thought he played really well. Like I said at the beginning of this summer league talk, I expected certain guys to come. I expected a lot of these, second year guys, people who have played, quite a few minutes in the NBA. I expected them to come in and put on good performances against these young teams. And he really stepped up to the plate. One thing that people have been pointing to with him is that he only went 5 for 21 from field goal. And I'll say that while that is not it's not a high percentage, he really made up for it by creating his own opportunities. And he's a guy that he wants to go in, he wants to get as close to the basket as possible. I mean, of course he shoots threes as well, but he wants to go in and he wants to draw fouls, and he does it really well. Now, not to get crazy and compare myself to an NBA player, but the way Keyonte George plays is the way that I like to play when I played basketball back in middle school. I was the guy that I'd shoot threes occasionally, but my bread and butter was really driving down to the paint, drawing fouls, and doing that. So it was really cool. I haven't really watched Keyonte George a lot. Like I said, I haven't been following the NBA or the Jazz really that closely in the last few years. So it's been really fun to watch him play though. These last 3 games, well, 2 games he only played in. Another thing is that he had 5 turnovers, and I don't know. To me, it just seems like it kind of seemed like he felt like he was on a higher level than who he was playing against. It seemed like he was just like, I'm gonna go out here and just do everything I can. And so I think he does need to clean up the turnovers a little bit, especially when he starts playing real competition during the NBA season. But it was a very similar story in the second game against Philly. 31 points, averaging 30.5 points during those 2 games. 9 for 15, so a little bit better field goal percentage. 2 for 6 from 3 and 11 for 12 from free throw line. And he's just a lot of fun to play. He's electric. I think he could be a really, really solid piece for this Jazz organization. He's one of those guys that you can really root for. And he's only 20 years old, so he's only got room to grow. While I do have my issues with rebuilding with a really young roster, this is one of those guys who you can really get behind and see a future with going forward. So a lot of fun. Obviously he was a big story the last out of the summer league, and hopefully he can continue that on and show that he can do that on the NBA level as well. Another guy that stood out to me a little bit was Bryce Sensabaugh. He played kind of the way I expected. This is what I expected from Keyonte George, Sensabaugh, Walker Kessler. He showed flashes to me, and it seemed like when I was watching really the Grizzlies in Memphis, really OKC as well. He had 18 points against OKC in 15 minutes. He just seems like he's gonna be a guy who can come off the bench. He may not be an NBA starter, but he can be a rotational player, a guy that comes in, and I thought he was a lot of fun to watch. Now, I mentioned this before, but I only watched condensed versions of these games, so one thing that I didn't really see, but looking at the stat sheet, it just seemed like it's a little bit of an issue, is turnovers. He had 7 against Memphis, only 1 against OKC, and then 5 against Philly. But besides that, man, he was 100% from free throw. He made a lot of, he was 3 for 7 from 3, 2 for 3 from 3, 1 for 5 from 3 for each of those games. So he's someone that may not be a starting caliber player in the NBA, but he came into the summer league and performed the way I would expect him to perform. Is he going to put up 15 plus points once the regular season starts? I don't know, probably not. But if you can get he's one of those guys that can come in and make some some splashy plays, especially when you need it. When you need to rotate someone in, he can get you solid 10 points a game. So he's someone that I'm excited to see going forward as well. Hopefully he can clean up those turnovers. Like I said, I didn't really see him when I watched the condensed broadcast, so hopefully they weren't like horrible bad turnovers where it doesn't look like he's an NBA player. But based on his stats, 15 points against Memphis, 18 against OKC, 17 against Philly, he can score, and that is important in the NBA. So that's one guy that I'm looking forward to seeing in the future as well, seeing how he can improve. Okay, the final player that I wanted to mention was Walker Kessler. I don't really know. I don't know. Watching Kessler in this summer league, I really expected him to be one of the more dominant players. He's 7'1", I believe, and he could do a little bit of everything. And he did do some big man things. Against Memphis, he only had 6 rebounds, but against Philly, he had 15. So that's pretty good. He did have 5 blocks against Memphis and only 1 against Philly. Then he had 2 steals in each of those games as well. So, but besides that, just watching him, it seemed seemed like he just didn't, I don't know. It didn't look like he was quite at the NBA caliber level. And I know he played relatively well in the NBA last season, but I don't know. Maybe he took it easy for Summer League, but he did play 33 minutes against Memphis and 30 against Philly. There was just nothing impressive to me about him. And I really expected him to be really good against this competition that he's going against. So I guess we'll see where that goes going forward, but I don't know. Overall, what I saw from the Jazz during the Summer League was just not what I expected. They did have a few guys, Keontae and Sensabaugh, who I think played up to the standard, but I really expected this Jazz team to really come out and maybe not dominate, but play better against this. I expected the more experienced guys to play better against the least experienced guys. Dad duties beckoned to me, as you may have heard. So, sorry, lost my train of thought. But yeah, I really expected a little bit more from these experienced players. Now, obviously, the rookies, it's going to take some time, most likely. I really liked what I saw from Isaiah Collier. Based off these 3 games, it seemed like he is the most ready to play at the NBA level. I'm excited to watch him grow. I think he's going to be an exciting player to watch over at the Delta Center. Cody Williams, I think, also showed a few flashes. He's got to bulk up. For now, I can see him being more of a rotational guy and then contribute a little bit later as, he puts on some weight and gains some experience in the NBA. Filipowski, we'll see. I didn't see anything that really stood out to me from him. Hopefully he can continue to improve. But yeah, it might take some time for him, but I am still hopeful. Other than that, I think some of the more experienced guys, Keontae and Sensabaugh, are 2 guys who can really play a role this upcoming season. Now, I'm not a big fan of tanking a season on purpose. I don't know. I know why teams do it, and I understand it from a logistical sense, but from a competitive culture setting, from that sort of laying the groundwork for what the Jazz are going to be in the future, I'm not a fan about tanking on purpose. I don't care how good the number 1 overall pick is projected to be. I'm just not a fan of it. I don't know. I have a hard time respecting teams that purposely tank. I mean, this draft class may have some really good prospects, sure. And, the more you lose, the higher chance you have of, having a better lottery pick or whatever. I'm just not a fan of that. Let these guys play their hardest and figure it out for themselves. Otherwise, you're just wasting years off of these guys' lives and wasting Jazz fan money. It's just a waste of time. I don't know. I have a hard time getting behind that idea. I want to see these guys go out there and give it their all every night. And if they give it their all and they end up being the worst team in the league, at least they tried. And I respect that a lot more than laying down and trying to get a first overall pick or a better lottery pick or whatever. Another guy that I mentioned, I don't actually have his stat line here, but Lofton. That guy was fun to watch. I don't know why. He's a guy that I don't think he's going to be a starting player in the NBA, but he's a guy I could definitely see myself rooting for. I see him, especially if you're in the arena. It's different when you're at the Delta Center, but when you're there and you see him come in, I can imagine the place going nuts for a guy like Lofton. He just seems like a really fun guy to watch, and he puts down some shots. He made a few plays there, and I'm like, I like this guy. So we'll see. We'll see how, like I said, I'm not super familiar with this Jazz roster. This was kind of my introduction to Keontae George. Like, I did not watch any Jazz basketball last year. I watched a couple plays where Jazz players were posterized on some dunks. I saw those plays. But besides that, I just didn't watch it all last year. I'm going to try to a little bit more this year. I'm not going to pay for Jazz Plus or whatever it's called. I do have cable or the satellite that I can tune in to K Jazz whenever they play at home, I believe. So I'll do that on occasion. Maybe watch a few more games this year than the last few years. But I think they have some bright young players who can come and play at a good level in the NBA. So good things to look forward to. Of course, that is all a waste if this season is purposely tanked. So we'll, like I've been saying for a lot of these guys, we'll just have to wait and see. But the future's bright. Keontae is a baller. I think Isaiah Collier is going to get there. He's going to be really fun to watch. But yeah, let me know. Before, one other thing I wanted to say was I saw the ridiculous price for the Salt Lake Summer League shirts. $40 for, it's a pretty plain t-shirt, but that just seems steep to me, especially when you're not sure it's the the NBA, you're seeing young guys who could potentially be great one day, but I have a hard time valuing that kind of thing. To me, it seems like a little bit of a money grab. I don't know how many fans are coming in from out of state to watch these young players. I mean, it's not like there's the next LeBron James out there playing. At least I didn't see that. So it seems like a little bit of a premium price for a product that is definitely not premium. Watching a bunch of rookies and young players from other teams come to Utah, and I mean, it's a little bit harder than a scrimmage. They're going hard out there, but it's not NBA level basketball. Definitely not. And this has been an issue for me since Ryan Smith took over. Seems like prices for things have skyrocketed, and the team has not been good, has not lived up to the premium prices that we're expected to pay. So I don't know if I'll be buying any Jazz gear this year. I'll give it one more year. We'll see how the season goes, and I might just have to make my own stuff. have my own designed Jazz shirts created. Nothing I would sell, just I don't know, could be fun. And I don't want to spend money on the Jazz for a minute because I still got a little bit of beef with them. Future's bright, but I still got beef. I'm gonna support. I still got a little bit of beef. So anyway, what are your thoughts on the Summer League? Do you agree with what I've said? Do you disagree? Who are you excited to watch going forward out of this Summer League group? Which of the three rookies do you think is gonna be a guy? Are there any guys out of the three? Are they all gonna be guys? I guess we'll see. Guess we will see. On to the Utah Hockey Club. So I know a few weeks ago I said I was going to do some more research and try to figure out what all these Utah Hockey Club moves mean, especially when it comes to the draft, free agency, stuff like that. And I haven't had time to really learn it all. So all my knowledge that I have currently is just stuff that I've read, other people's opinions. But I want to talk about it a little bit. One of the big moves that the Hockey Club made this year was they traded for Mikhail Sergachev, and from everything I've seen, this seems to be a really big move for the Utah Hockey Club. He is one of the NHL's top defenders, and it's believed that he's going to be the number one guy in Utah as well. He's won 2 Stanley Cups, so he has championship pedigree, and I know this is, the Utah Hockey Club this team was, what is the correct pronunciation? They were the Arizona Coyotes, of course, so this team has been together, but when you move to a new city, it can be a fresh start. You may want to develop a new culture, and bringing in a guy like this, even though I don't know a lot about hockey, he's, Stanley Cup winner, someone that can help implement a championship type mentality to the locker room. And of course, I mean, it may not happen right away, but still, I think culture is such a big thing in sports in general, and I'm sure it's the same thing in hockey. So that seems to be like a big move. I'm excited to see how that turns out. Who did they sign? Who did they draft? They signed Ian Cole to a 1-year contract. He's also a 2-time Stanley Cup champion. So based on the signings this offseason, including Kevin Stenlund, he is also a Stanley Cup winner. So it seems like they're really trying to establish a championship mentality. And I think that's great. Obviously it's a brand new sports. It's a brand new city that they're playing in. And you want to start off on the right foot, especially when you make such a major move like that. I mean, how many players are on a hockey team? 20-ish, I would guess. Like I said, I'm still learning hockey, but 20 players who, have to move their families, and not only the players, but the whole, the back office, management, coaches, stuff like that, trainers, they all have to move as well. So I think it's important to start establishing a new culture, especially when you get a big fresh start like that. And let me go. I thought this article included the draft picks. Okay, so 9 players were drafted, and of course the first round pick was Tidge Ginla. Hopefully I pronounced that right. I believe I heard something about Tidge having an older brother or a father, someone who was a pretty well-known hockey player. So obviously I don't know what any of this means. And then Cole Beaudoin. I don't know. I didn't know that there were only 6 rounds in the draft, so they had 9 picks. Okay, so they drafted 6 defensemen and 3 forwards. That's interesting because from what I know about hockey, there are usually more forwards than defensemen. So I don't know. I don't know what the reasoning is behind that. That's pretty cool. Let me know. I'm going to do my own research as well. But what do you think of the Utah Hockey Club draft? I don't know what to make of it. I do like the free agent signings just based off of the championship pedigree that it seems that they're trying to establish. Now, I don't know how compared to other sports, how fast you can build a championship roster, but setting that foundation early is critical, I think. So, I'm excited excited. Seems like the single game ticket prices are pretty crazy. So I don't know how many games I'm actually going to be able to go watch. Hopefully they'll have them on TV somewhere I can watch them. That's probably where I'm going to get most of my Utah Hockey Club watch time in. So yeah, let me know what you think of the Hockey Club's moves. That's the thing. I want to, maybe I should just call them Utah. UHC. Yeah. UHC. Let me know what you think of their moves. I'm still debating on if I want to buy any merch from them. I've stated before that this just seems a little boring, a little plain. Something you could pull up on, you could do it on Microsoft Word, just make their logo and some of the graphics that you're using. But I don't know, it still would be cool to represent them. It's too bad that they're sticking with that color scheme despite the name. Makes me think that they already know what the name is, which based on some of the interviews I've seen and things online, I think the general manager may have called them the Yeti already. And it's not my favorite name, but I mean, it's not horrible, honestly. There are a lot worse names out there, like the Black Diamonds. I'm glad that is not one of the finalists. Thank God. Anyway, things are looking good. Hopefully they can establish a good culture, and I'm excited for this upcoming inaugural season for the Utah Hockey Club. One last piece of local news that I wanted to talk about, and this one is actually the first time I've talked about this team this year, and that is RSL. The more that I do this podcast, the more I realize that I need to pay a little bit more attention to my local sports. RSL, I love RSL. Their Jazz games in the past used to be my favorite sporting event to go to in Utah. RSL may have taken that over. Bees games are fun too, but whenever I have the chance to go to an RSL game, it's always a blast. I love going there. I love that stadium. It's just so fun. We almost went last weekend, but we had some plans and it was a little bit hot and we didn't want to bring our 4-month daughter to that hot stadium, especially with all those people. So hopefully we can get to a game soon. I have to get her some of those headphones you see babies wearing so that she doesn't go deaf. But anyway, RSL had 2 players selected to the MLS All-Star game, and I think that's pretty cool. Chicho Arango, who is a forward, I believe. He had that, I did see this, he had that like half midfield goal like a month ago. That was pretty insane. And yeah, I really want to go to an RSL game as soon as we can. It's a little bit warm right now, but the other guy that was selected was Justin Glad, who is a defenseman. And one thing that's cool about Glad is I think he's like a hometown guy. He's been part of the he made his debut in 2015. He's played 20,006 minutes. This has probably changed since this article came out, but soon he will surpass Chris Wingert and Tony Beltran, and then he would only be behind Kyle Beckman and Nick Raimondo. Man, those 2 guys were so fun to watch. Nick Raimondo is probably my favorite RSL player ever. Part of it is because he was just an amazing goalie. Every time we'd go to a game, he was just awesome. So fun to watch. And then Beckerman, of course, was a legend as well. But it's really cool to see this guy who's been here for such a long time finally get a break, get to an all-star contest, and it makes me want to get out to an RSL game. But yeah, I just wanted to throw that out there because it's really cool, and those 2 guys deserve recognition. I think it's the first time since 2011 or 2021 that they've had an all-star selection. So pretty cool. Also, RSL had like pretty crazy win streak. They almost broke the MLS record. This team seems to be really hot, and yeah, I want to get to a game so bad. Hopefully, at the end of summer when it starts cooling down a little bit, that would be the ideal time to go. But yeah, really things are looking up for RSL. They're probably they have been the most successful team in Utah since they've come in. They've won what did they win 1 MLS Cup? Yeah, 2009. So it's been a while, but they've actually won a championship. Jazz haven't done that. They came close, but then they ran into Michael Jordan. So yeah, just really fun team to watch, and hopefully they can continue being hot and making a run at that trophy again this year. At this point, there hasn't been really any updates on the Brandon Ayuk situation, so not a lot to talk about as far as the 49ers go. But one thing that does involve the 49ers was the new Netflix series called Receiver dropped this week, and I already watched all 8 episodes, and I thought it was really interesting, honestly. As far as George Kittle and Debo, those were the 2 49ers players that were involved with this project. Seeing them and hearing, following them throughout the season it made me appreciate them a little bit more. Debo is my favorite player on the team, so I already had a lot of respect for him, and I like him a lot, and I liked him even more after this series. It was tough to watch. There's that Michael Scott quote that I tweeted out before watching it, where he's like, "I am ready to be hurt again," or whatever that quote is, and because this series was filmed during the last season, and we all know how that ended, and I knew that was gonna come up. Luckily, it wasn't like a full episode. The Super Bowl was like half an episode for the finale, but it brought up a few things that I thought were interesting. Debo, I completely forgot that Debo got hurt early on in that game, and people give him a lot of crap for his performance, not being able to beat man coverage, but he pulled his hamstring pretty early on, and I'm sure that didn't help at all. I think they had a pretty big game plan set for Debo, but he knew he was limited. He kept saying in the series, like, "I'm hurt, I'm gonna have to sit out this play," and he had to choose which place he sat out, and unfortunately that ended up costing the Niners. And then Kittle hurt his shoulder to the point where he couldn't lift his arm, and that was like right before overtime. So I don't even remember that, honestly. I think I've just kind of gotten the Super Bowl out of my head, but man, just some tough breaks for the Niners. No excuses. They still should have and could have won that game. But man, that was tough to watch. And those 2 guys, I think, are going to be key core players for a long time to come. It made me want to keep them for longer. And I thought Kittle was starting to get old, but I think he's still got some juice left, honestly. If they can get another tight end as well, so that Kittle isn't the only tight end that's, blocking, taking hits, catching the ball, take off a little bit of wear and tear from his body, I think he can be the same old George Kittle that we all know and love. It did get me excited for this upcoming season, especially knowing that Debo, man, everything I've seen from Debo, he just looks like he's slimmed down. He looks fast. Hopefully he doesn't affect his power, because that's one thing that Debo is known for, is just running through guys and breaking the first tackle, putting his shoulder down, putting a hit on someone. And so hopefully slimming down won't affect that too much. I'm sure it won't, but yeah, it was a good series to watch. I really had, my little brother always talks about Amon-Ra St. Brown, and I was kind of one of those people that was like, he's all right. He's a good receiver, sure. But after watching this series, I really have a lot more respect for him. He is one of the hardest working receivers, NFL players I've seen. His dad kind of cracked me up during the series. He was very tough on his sons, and he was funny. He was an interesting character for sure. But Amon-Ra, man, I don't want to pull for the Lions this year, because I think the Niners have one more good shot in them. But if the Lions do end up being the NFC contestant in the Super Bowl, I would probably root for them to win. Amon-Ra, he's a dude and he works hard. So other than that, Devontae was definitely an interesting watch. You could tell he hated Jimmy G's guts. Jimmy G was, I will say, I didn't think Jimmy G was as bad as a lot of people thought or said he was, but I think he played his best football with the Niners. At this point, he's just kind of gone downhill ever since he tore his ACL. I think he's been a different player. He's kind of gone downhill from there, and he's great in Shanahan's system, but going to Oakland, going to Vegas, you can tell he's not that true playmaker quarterback that you need to win in the NFL, and he's going to be a really good backup for the Rams. And so Devontae, it was cool to see that locker room kind of switch after McDaniels was fired and Jimmy G was benched. And Devontae is just Devontae. He still managed to put up good numbers, and if he had a really good quarterback, or he might have put up even better numbers. And then Justin Jefferson, he missed a lot of the season with an injury, but he's the number 1 receiver in the NFL. That is no question, but he makes it look so effortless. It's kind of crazy. He misses half the season with, or maybe not half the season, but misses it with the, what was it, a hamstring? Was it a hamstring? I'm forgetting it right now. And then he hurt his shoulder, I believe. A lot of shoulder injuries for receivers. And he still had a crazy season. It'll be be interesting to see how he does with Sam Darnold at his quarterback or potentially JJ McCarthy. But man, it just sheds a new light on just how good he is. It's crazy how effortless he makes it look at receiver. And he keeps it up. I don't think anyone will ever catch Jerry Rice, but he could be up there as one of the greats in NFL history if he has a quarterback that can get him the ball. But yeah, I like the series. It was a little bit too long in my opinion. There were some points right in the middle of the series where it got a little boring, so maybe shorten it a little bit next time for whatever you do next. What would be interesting? Man, it'd be interesting to see some defensive guys. I don't know, it'd be cool, like defensive end. Like if you just did defensive end, you've got Bosa, Garrett, Watt, some of those guys who you can, they're the best of the best, so it may not be those guys. Or you can get a mix of, cornerback, safety, linebacker, so you get a few different perspectives. But I do like keeping it with, I don't know, I like the series. So seeing another position would be pretty cool. It'd be nice to see the defensive perspective. Defensive back, linebacker, DN, kind of see how those guys think in comparison to receiver and quarterback. That way it's not just, I know the NFL right now is an offensive driven league and that's all people want is, score points, but I want to see the other perspective. So NFL, whatever you're doing for this whoever, was it Peyton Manning? Was it Omaha Productions? I think I saw that he was a producer or maybe the main guy in the credits. I saw Patrick Mahomes' name in the credits. That was interesting. It's almost like they scripted it. Anyway, yeah, I'm excited to see what they do for next year. If you haven't watched it, I'd recommend checking it out. It's a pretty cool series. It's nice that they dropped it here in the middle of the off season when there's not a lot going on. So yeah, check it out. Netflix, wide receiver on Netflix. And that will wrap up this edition of Sports Saturday, part of the Storytime with Chris podcast. Thank you for taking the time and listening. It means a lot, and I hope you enjoyed. Let me know down below why you listen. Are you interested in the Jazz, Utah Hockey Club, RSL, just any Utah sports, NFL coverage, 49ers coverage? What brings you to my podcast? I want to get to know all of my listeners, so and let me know down below, who are your favorite teams? Are they all Utah based besides the NFL? I'm curious to see who my listeners are and why you tune in. There is something I'm debating on doing, and that's just covering the three main Utah sports every Saturday, even if there's no news. And that would be the Jazz, Hockey Club, and RSL. And football season is going to be coming up soon, so I don't know if I'll be covering BYU and Utah at all. Haven't really watched a lot of college football the last few years. If I do catch it, occasionally I'll watch it. Oh, someone's sad about that. Do you want to watch more college football? I mean, you've never even watched a single game. Do we need to watch more? Okay, we'll watch more for you this year. Anyway, thanks for tuning in. If you haven't, please like the video. If you're on YouTube, subscribe. This podcast is also available on Spotify. And I do more than just sports talk. I do music reviews and storytelling. I haven't done storytelling in a while, but I've got a few things up in the works. It's just finding time to record those episodes. Sports time is a lot easier to do just because it's, there's not a lot of, it doesn't have to be, super structured or anything like that. Just come on here and talk about something that I know best, which is sports. Anyway, thanks again for being here. This has been Storytime with Chris.